Allah says, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. He said to the angels, surely I am creating in the earth, I'm placing in the earth a khalifa. So the angels say, قالوا أتجعل فيها ما يفسد فيها ويسفك دماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. Say, well, why would you do that? Yeah. Why would you make one who will make fitna in the earth and shed blood? When we are glorifying in your name, why would you do that? And Allah said, what did Allah say? What did He say? He said, surely I know what you do not know. So first of all, each of us carries a great secret. We were created to be the Khalifatul Ard. And what does that mean? It means that we are the creature that Allah created to take care of His creation. The creation made sajda to Sayyidina Adam because in the creation he is at the pinnacle. He is the reminder of Allah. Yeah? So each of us is the reminder to all of the creation of Allah. Here's the genius of man. What's the largest land animal that you could think of? It's the elephant, right? Now, how does man tame an elephant? When the elephant's a baby, he puts the largest chain on the little thing. It's heavy on his neck. He doesn't move. Then as he grows, successively, they put a smaller and smaller and smaller chain. Until the elephant becomes accustomed to the chain, and even a string or nothing, it will follow his indication. This is the genius of man, because man has an intellect. It's his genius and his curse. Yeah? Because we can conceive of the most elaborate ways of rebellion, and we can conceive of the most elaborate manners of obedience to Allah. So this creature who has been placed in the earth, who has this great secret that the angels could not perceive, they only perceived his evil. And we can see the effect of our evil. Na'udhu billah. Because each of us carries a responsibility from Allah and a gift from Allah. That if you call on Him sincerely, He will answer your dua. Yeah? And if we are prepared to pay the price in obedience and working out using these intellects that we have to work out how will we be obedient, then Allah will turn to us and that will change the world. But if we do not call with that utter sincerity, because Allah says, هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. What is the reward of ihsan except more ihsan? This is the equation that defies mathematics. Yeah? When you have ihsan, Allah will increase your. You have ihsan, Allah will increase your ihsan. So the one who calls at him sincerely, each of his calls, Allah increases his ihsan. So you are the masters of the universe. The universe is the big man, and man is the small universe. When the heart of man is sick, the universe is sick. So know that by being the inheritors of the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the master of the messengers, Sayyid al-Kawnayn, the master of the two worlds, the master of the two universes, this one and the one of the Akhirah. Since we are from his nation, know that we carry the secret. And if we do not do it, then the creation makes dua against us, because we are its khulafa. And if we turn, the moment that we turn to obey Allah and to fulfill that contract, the whole creation, every stone, every leaf, every particle of wind makes dua for you. You are the masters. And I don't care how big someone's gun is, or his bomb, or his army. That cannot stand against the dua of the believers. Because even before Islam, by the presence of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam amongst the Quraysh, what did Allah do to the army of Abraha? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل. I don't need to translate that one, right? Everybody knows that one. What did Allah do with the companions of the elephant? Yeah. What did he do? Yeah. With what? Tyra? Yeah, exactly. With pellets and birds. What kinds of pellets? Clay pellets. Yeah. And there have been numerous accounts across the ages from the time of Sayyidina Adam to our time of what has happened when the believers have been in a difficult situation but have turned sincerely and Allah's help has come. Before the murder of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu an, the Muslims used to see the angels riding out of the clouds into battle. After the murder of Sayyidina Uthman, that ended. They never saw it. But you will always hear of people talking about seeing the effects of things that have nothing to do with a human hand or anything that we can imagine. Well, we can imagine the Malaika. The point is that the whole of the universe will serve you if you serve Allah. That is who you are. That is your secret. There is nothing in the universe more powerful than you, not because of your power, because the creation has none. Al-Qadir, Allah. The Qadir, the power is Allah. So it's not by our power. We do not move by our power. It's by the power of Allah. So Sufism is not wadifas, and great talks, and visiting tombs. All of these things are part of it. It is about being possessed of the awareness of Allah. To see the fi'lullah in your everydayness, to see the acts of Allah in your everydayness. To be lying in your bed and to be turning and the name of your beloved just issues from your tongue. You wake up remembering him and you go to sleep remembering him. And when you're sleeping, you can't forget him. You walk on the street seeing him. You can't see him, can you? Well, you can see his acts. Because there is nothing that is not his act. Yeah? That's what tasawwuf is. In your marriage, you see him. In your divorce, you see him. A'udhu billah. In your business, you see him. In your profit, you see him. In your loss, you see him. Because he is ar-rafi'u wal-khafidu. He raises up and he lowers. He gives and he withholds. He expands and he contracts. Sometimes your risk expands and it will expand. So no, it will expand to its limit, and then what will happen? It contracts. Then it expands and then it contracts. So if you become anxious with his contraction, then if you keep turning to him, you will eventually realize that it will contract, it will expand again. And if you become anxious with his expansion, then you will eventually realize that it will contract again. Nothing is fixed. The creation is like that. Yeah? That's the creation. So, there is a science which allows us to see pattern and number. That is mathematics. Yeah, because mathematics is a science of pattern and number. And so, what you get to see is the divine mathematics. And when you begin to see that, you realize that your niyyah multiplies the times of expansion. Your niyyah multiplies the times of expansion. So, you've been to, school and university, and they've taught you, because there's the philosophy that is dominant in the world for the last 200 years is called positivism. It says, okay, only what I can confirm with my five senses exists. Yeah? So one of the European philosophers, in fact, he was a student of one of the great European philosophers, but he was a psychologist. He was a psychiatrist, in fact. I can't remember his name. Every year he would invite this philosopher called Heidegger to stay with him, and Heidegger would give lectures. And so he dealt with the positivists and their fixation and their excitement. They're always fixed on what can be measured. If it can't be measured, then it doesn't exist. So what did he say? He says, okay, measure joy, measure anger. Measure any of these emotions. Are they measurable? How are we going to measure them? So there are, the point he was making is that there are categories of things which can be measured, and then categories of things which cannot. But when you connect to seeing Allah's act in everything, then you will begin to see that when you act for the face of Allah, it multiplies the effect. It multiplies the effect, sometimes, many times, beyond any conception of number that you can have. In the time of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he was writing the Muwatta. He was gathering the Muwatta. And as he was gathering the Muwatta, someone came to him and said, "But why are you writing a Muwatta?" He says, "Everybody's writing a Muwatta." So Imam Malik says, "Okay, please bring me their Muwattas." So they brought him their Muwattas, and he looked at them. And he spent his time reviewing them. And then the person returned, and Imam Malik said to him, he says, "What you do not understand, my friend, is that nothing endures except that which is done for the face of Allah." How many Muwattas do you know about? Just one. Yeah? There's only one Muwatta that we now know about. And Imam Malik gave us the indication of the way to gain, or to enter into the divine multiplication. Act for the face of Allah. But you will not be able to act for the face of Allah until we take that journey which purifies us of every connection to event and thing. And things are events, or events are things. So that journey in which we turn from every form that we are connected to Allah. So we turn from what appears to be the means and the causes to Allah. Because what Allah wants to do is done, and what Allah does not want to happen will not happen. Yeah? So if you grasp this connection between who you are as Muslims, why did Allah create mankind? And which party has He brought you out of from amongst? And what is our responsibility? Know that we are responsible for the whole universe. Not by our power, but by our surrendering to the power of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Okay, and without that, you have to be very careful, because you end up with a tasawwuf that removes itself from its social and Khalifa responsibility. It's not about your experiences. It's not about that at all. Allah gives to whom He wishes, and He withholds from whom He wishes. Some awliya will experience nothing. They won't even know they're awliya. You might think that is like a punishment. But If you know you're a wali of Allah, then that's a hell of a responsibility. So if he doesn't know, he just gets on with the business of doing what he's doing. And Allah loves it. And then there's some awliya who know that they are. And sometimes it kills them. And when we go through the presentation, you'll realize why, I think. Yeah? So we have a job. We are the Khalifs of the universe. And if we do it, the world that is coming will not resemble the one that you know now. I promise you. If you take it, the world that is coming will not resemble the one that you know now. Yeah? And I just got back. I got back it's about a month now, from Spain. I was in Granada. Beautiful city. Imagine one of the most beautiful Muslim cities in the middle of Christian Europe, eh? See how Allah turns the tides? But on the buildings, it was just written dhikr of Allah. La ghaliba illallah. There is no victor except Allah. Al-Malikullah. The king is Allah. This is written by the king, right? The king is Allah. Forget me. The king is Allah. Izz is Allah's. Honor and power and strength is Allah's. Al-Qadir, Allah. The power is Allah. Everywhere, 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 everywhere. You get drunk. You can't forget it. And this Spanish Christian woman went into one of the buildings and she walks out and she's just crying. She can't help herself. Yes? How many years? 1492, Granada fell. It was on the plains of Granada, with the fall of Granada, that Columbus came and met King Ferdinand and his wife Isabella to agree to travel to the New World, which was the Old World. Yeah, right there, 1492. The fall of Granada is, in meaning, is the most significant event in modern history. If you can go to that place, go. You will see why. That is the possibility of Muslims, yeah, who take on their Khalifal responsibility. You aren't just people who came across from Pakistan or wherever and had been poor, and now look at my circumstances. Allah has the wealth of the whole universe. He has the wealth of the whole universe. Do what He wants, and He puts it at your service. Whatever you need. You see, that's the secret of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You want his secret? That is his secret. Do what Allah wants, and the whole universe has to serve you. Its wealth comes and it opens for you to do what you want. And then you don't even care about it. And the less you care about it, the more comes. The less you care about it, the more comes. Because the less you care about it, is the more generous you are with it. The more you care about it, is the more you want to hold on to it. And the more you want to hold on to it, is the less comes. That's the secret of wealth. That is wealth with barakah. There's a wealth which is a punishment. You get it. You're anxious about getting it. You're anxious about losing it. You're anxious. You spend all your time preserving it. That's punishment. In fact, is called stupidity. So may Allah make us from the intelligent and make us from the successful. Yeah? And just to end this, to say, Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Alif Lam Mim. Only Allah knows the meaning of those, and those whose hearts He chooses to give that knowledge to. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب. It says, it didn't say this, it says that. What book? That book. In which there's no doubt. Yeah, we translate it as this, because in meaning, yeah, but that book. Because this Quran that you have is really what is written on the Lawh al-Mahfuz. Yeah? So when you bring it out, you're bringing out the pattern of the creation from the Lawh al-Mahfuz that was revealed for you. And this Quran is the essence of it. So you want to understand any science, anything, it's from this book, right? لا ريب فيه, in it. هدى للمتقين, a guidance to the people of taqwa. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب, they believe in the unseen. ويقيمون الصلاة, and they perform the prayer. ومما رزقناهم ينفقون, and they give of what we have given them. And in that ayah is the secret of fana. Because when they gave it, who gave it to them? When you received it, who did you receive it from? And then it ends, the bit I want to recite, that they are from the muflihun, they are from the people of success. So may Allah make us the people of success. Okay, are you ready? Do you want a little break? Do you want a little break? Or should we start? Bismillah. How do I make this thing work? I just hit this button here, right? Click. Yeah. Okay, good. And now would I go back? Okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm learning how to use this. I'm technologically challenged. Okay, I see that I'm supposed to be speaking about the spirit fasting and the samosa. Why did you tell me about this? Okay. Do you remember? No, the samosa. This is a funny one. Do you remember Al-Shabaab in Somalia? Their fatwa on samosas. Do you remember? They said samosas are haram. You guys are in trouble. Yeah. They said samosas are haram because they have 3 sides and 3 points. And they're shaped like the Christian symbols. So I don't know how you get a fatwa with that one. Anyway, so they said, yeah, that samosas are haram because of that. Now, really, I could see how I could like that kind of thinking, because I remember when I had to learn my times tables, right? I mean, it has a cross in the middle. So if I was thinking right, I could have said, well, this is haram, I can't learn this because it's got a cross in the middle. Same thinking. Unfortunately, it's a load of rubbish, eh? But it gives us an indication, because we have this deep deen, it's profound deen. And we can do so much with it, right? But samosas, you see, since I've been in this country, I don't know how many times I've gone to break my fast, and there have been a load of samosas there. I mean, you guys love samosas. So then people will turn around and will say to you, well, you shouldn't eat so many oily foods. It's going to clog your arteries. But the point is, we have to think, well, there's one interesting thing. Since 1994, we have known that fats and high cholesterol do not cause heart disease, right? Since 1994, we've had interesting research. You know about it? Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to eventually, at the end of this, we're going to work out the things that we can eat and what their benefits are, and the things we shouldn't. But on that journey, we're going to take some interesting turns. And you have to bear with me, because I'm going to want to speak to you about some things that are not generally spoken about anymore. And you'll see that they're really important for us to understand. Okay? So I'll dive into the middle of things. Bismillah. Okay. Man. What is man? Our classical understanding of man is, and I'm talking about from something is called ilm qawniya. It's we call cosmology. How is the universe made? Yeah, so you get sciences from how the universe is made. That's what your sciences are built on. So if we have sciences, have to be based on the Quranic cosmology. So what is man? Man is this barzakh between a world which is hidden and a world which is manifest. Yeah? He stands there. When he looks within himself, fi nafsi, he sees a world which is hidden. And he has access to that. When he looks out, he sees a world which is manifest. He is in the realm called Jabarut. Yeah, man is in the realm called Jabarut. It's a realm of light. So peeling back your opinions about yourself and your connection with yourself and the world opens up your nurani capacity, which is what you really are. So the zone that is manifest is the zone of form. So things are forms, okay? The water appears, it has form. We've made this, it has form. But the forms encode meaning. Sorry, the hay fever has been getting to me this year. Yeah, this forms encode meaning. So when you see something, it has a meaning to you. Generally, what has no meaning to you remains closed from you. Yeah? Have you ever had the experience where, maybe you've been hearing birds singing all the time? Yeah? And then somebody sits with you and says, this, you hear that song of that bird? This is twit or swallow or whatever. Yeah? Then every time you hear, then you will become aware of birds and they're singing, because that comes forward to you. Yeah? The creation is like that. When you are aware of the meaning of something, then Allah brings it forward to you. So this zone of form has encoded meaning, because its meaning, its meanings were written on the Lawh al-Mahfuz, because Allah created two creational realities when He created the world. First, He created the Haqiqatul Muhammadiyah, the Muhammadan reality, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then from that, He took one part, He made it the qalam. and he commanded the qalam, the pen, to write on the lawh. So in that moment, on the creation is written its purpose. Yeah? And from that writing, the angels bring forth, the angels of Qadr bring forth these realities from the hidden realms into the manifest. So when they cross over from the hidden realms into the manifest, they take on form. If you see them, and everybody has access to that, if you see them before they come over, the meaning will appear to you with many forms, depending on how you are turned. Is that clear? Is that clear? Yeah? Yeah, so the meanings will appear to you. So, you may see the same, you will see the same thing, the same meaning in different forms, and then in your heart you will be able to recognize that it is. Yeah? So that is the zone of meaning, the malakut and the mulk. So the zone of the malakut is inhabited by creatures like angels, and Allah talks about this zone because it is vast. The Prophet ﷺ, in fact, no, it wasn't the Prophet ﷺ, it was Sayyidina Ali. He said that the relationship between the mulk and the malakut, and he didn't use those words, but is like if I took this ring and I threw it in the Arabian desert. So this manifest aspect of the creation is like the size of this ring to thousands of square miles of desert. That's the scale. That zone is coming down from that zone, and time in that zone, 10,000 years can be like 1 year here. It's emerging out. And in there is the place of souls. Yeah? And so your soul came with your meaning and your mizaj. You have the word mizaj, yeah? You know the word mizaj is your particular temper, your color, your taste, your meaning. And what happens is that ruh is brought from there by the angels to be placed in a body that you inherited from your parents. Yeah, it's placed in a body which you inherited from your parents, which has its because you receive something from your father and something from your mother, and that is like you could say in one way that once that it was called a zygote, once this creature is formed, it itself has a spirit, like an animal spirit that animates it, yeah, it causes it to grow and move and multiply. And then at a certain time, which is the time of the quickening, when you start to feel the baby moving around and so on, yeah, that's when the ruh has been put into it, and then it comes with its meaning and its predetermination. So you're connected with this part of you which is from the malakut, and this part of you which is from the mulk, and you are the connection between the two. And the ruh has come to govern this body of clay. You know? It's come to govern this body of potter's clay. And in order to do it, it has to discipline it. But as you grow up in the beginning, you are filled with joy and praise. So you're playing and running, and you want to do those things, and you don't want anyone to contain you. And then our education within our societies begins to teach us what we can do and what we can't. Yeah? Until we develop language to the point that a creature of meaning is born, and you can begin to make the journey to taking on your Khalifal responsibility. Whichever culture you're in, you will find, or whichever remnants of the tradition of Tawheed, even if they are pagans, they have a little bit of this left, this basic understanding left. Okay? Good. So then the ruh, it enters. So it governs. So we would say like the kursi, the throne of the ruh, is the heart. So ruh has entered you. The first place it entered, the place of its entry is the heart. And it sits there. And then it differentiates its potentialities. What do I mean? In it, this ruh has these capacities. And then, to govern this body that it has come into, it begins to extend those capacities to different places. And this is how our psychology will be born. So, let's take, a place like the liver. If you have liver trouble, you will find that you will have a tendency to become angry. Yeah, you get a short fuse. If you have weakened kidneys, you'll find that you have a tendency to be fearful or anxious. Okay? And it's interesting because as you study modern physiology, you start to get the confirmations of these things. It begins to give you, a how. So why? Why is this? Because these capacities of the soul are called quwwa. So we call them quwwa. We call it like powers. And at the liver, the capacity the soul manifests is the will to do things. So when you want to do something and you can't do it, what happens? You get frustrated, right? Then what happens? You become angry. Yeah, because the will to do has been interfered with. In the place of the kidneys, the kidneys are really interesting because they will control fluid volumes and consistency across the body. One of the things they say is it's like the mizan. It's weighing the fluids. Yeah? That's one of its jobs. It weighs the fluids. So it controls those things. It has, on top of it, like a crown, it has the adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland produces hormones which control things and influences things from the liver to the thyroid to the heart. And this communication between the adrenals and the different parts of the body is necessary to keeping you alive. So in modern emergency medicine, what they do is when you have someone who is really badly injured, the first thing we have to control are fluid volumes. Yeah? And how do we do that? We control that either by taking control of the kidneys or bypassing them completely and controlling them artificially. So what's the role of the kidney? The kidney's role is the will to survive. Yeah? So when the will to survive is threatened, what do you feel? Fear. Yeah? So you'll find that the kidneys, when they operate well, are essential to the development of things like wisdom, because it's your ability to project yourself into the future. It's your ability to project the effect of what you're doing into the future, to understand how it affects your survival. But because if you journey from the first state of man, which is narcissistic, it's about being possessed by yourself, to being universal, to seeing the needs of others, then you look at the survival of the species. Then you journey to recognizing your Khalifal responsibility. So then you see your responsibility is the survival and health of the universe. Which is, so when you find that the kidneys are not working well, these capacities will begin to not work well. I'm going to go over some of these there, but you have understood that bit, yes? Of how your psychology emerges from the interaction of the soul with its organs, yeah.
So are you saying that there's some sort of dysfunction in the body? Someone's got like physical,
yes,
heart disease,
yes,
that's going to have a negative effect on their personality and how they interact?
yes, yes. You'll find people who have heart disease will tend to be inappropriate. Yeah, sometimes they'll be inappropriate because of the nature of the heart. The first role of the heart is that when the soul enters, it gives you connection to the world, right? But then it situates you in the world. So the stability of that capacity begins to break down. So then the person ends up being inappropriate. Yeah? Any questions? You got that? Yeah?
Somebody suffering from diabetes, what kind of, what's going to life is that?
Well, diabetes is a complex disease, okay? If someone has diabetes, what you're looking at is the breakdown of their sugar management capacities because it is overloaded, because we have really carbohydrate-rich diets. So we have diets full of rice and wheat, etc. And then, on top of that, we have sugar. And then on top of that, we have something like, because sugar is sucrose, which is the normal sugar, which is easier to digest. We have something called fructose, which puts a lot of pressure on the liver. So it depends on which part of that sugar management capacity is really broken down, because it affects the kidneys. The kidneys are involved in that. The liver is involved in that. So if you're on a high fructose diet, the capacity of the liver, and when I speak about the liver, I'm just not talking about that one organ, the liver. Yeah? This one organ, the liver, has relationships with other parts of the body. So when we speak about these things like that, we're talking about a functional organ. Yeah? Because it has these relationships with these other parts of the body, which it governs. Yeah? So most of it is centered in the organ, but it extends. Yeah, so when we talk about that, that's how we're speaking about it. So when the diabetes comes, depending on the nature of the diabetes, how it's broken down, you get different patterns. But generally, one of the things you'll see is a loss of energy and stamina. And as a result of that, sometimes a tendency to be a bit negative. Yeah? And that's when you see that tendency to be a bit negative, look towards the kidneys. Yeah. When you see a tendency with diabetes to become angry, then most likely there's some involvement of a high fructose diet in the diet, which are fruit sugars, which have put pressure on the liver.
With fructose, am I right to say fructose is in fruits, like natural fruits?
Is in natural fruits.
So are you saying that fruits are not good for you? Or?
No, I'm saying that when you give a person the equivalent of 100 apples in a can of Coke, then that's not good for them. Yeah, that's the problem. You could eat fruits as children. I mean, I grew up in Guyana. In the daytime I ate fruits. The thing about fruits is that their energy doesn't last long. So you can run around for about 2 or 3 hours and then you need some more fruit. But fruit there's not a problem. Fruit sugar itself isn't damaging. It's the quantity of sugars that we consume, which is something that I think is really important, because in our society, what we have is a diet that is in a very large account made up of things that will end up as glucose, as sugars. And this damages our sugar management capacities. Yeah? Any other questions? See, this kind of thing, or this aspect, is a knowledge which is rarely spoken about anymore. Yeah? So, basically what I am saying is that the health of your body, or the health of your organs, will affect how your psychology, how you behave. And the way that you behave will affect the health of your organs also. Yeah? Just from this understanding. So your behavior, if you are angry all the time, you will damage the liver. If you are excessive in a life that is challenging and stressful, you will affect the kidneys because of anxiety about survival. Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to go on. No questions?
Would that explain why there's so much mental health problems in the West? Because would you say it's because of the food types of food we eat in the West?
That is a large part of it, yes. We have two problems. The first problem we have, the most important problem, is that we reshaped society to suit business. So one aspect of man was allowed to dominate over all others. And so what has happened is that the very shape of the family has been distorted. And the pressures of living and the normal things that would happen in people's lives, things like community and so on, they've just been shattered. And the human being was made to live in that environment which existed previously, not this one that we've made. So that's your first problem. Your second problem is this thing of the diet. Yes. To cut it short, is that the brain is an organ that's predominantly made up of what? 70% of the brain is made up of fats. Yeah? And the majority of our diet is our sugars, which are then turned into if we take a carbohydrate high diet, then in order to manage that, the body has to turn them into fats. And if you add a balanced amount of fats, then you'd store them as glycogen, right? Which can then be released. And those types of high, and because the brain depends a lot upon cholesterol and our hormonal health, because requires cholesterol, yeah, which is made from fats, which we produce from fats, because you don't really use cholesterols that you eat like that. You have to produce them internally. Then yeah, you're going to have hormonal breakdown, which is going to affect that, and then you're going to have dietary problems, and also a large part is what proceeds from the small intestine to the large intestine. Well, he's a doctor, so yeah, so yes, once that begins to break down, you'll find, and the next slide you'll see why. Okay. So I'm moving on. Good. So the potentialities, so the quwwah, which we just spoke about, those capacities, and the psyche. Actually, psyche is an interesting word. In Greek, it means breath. Ruh means breath. And the other aspect is that the word that we have, the other word that we use for spirit, the other word we use for soul is spirit, right? And that, in Latin, comes from a root which also means breath. Yeah, inspire, respire. All of these words are from this word which means breath. So it seems that universally man has understood the soul to be connected to breath. So the heart in children, right? What do you see about children? You just leave a child, one of the things you will see, okay, they cry and so on, but joy. Yeah, because when it came into the world, because it's early, it's still very connected to its heart. And the experience of a heart is joy. And the other thing that comes from joy is love. So, when you're joyful and you love something, what happens? You praise it. Because man praises what is beautiful. He doesn't praise what is ugly. So Al-Fatiha starts, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Okay, because the basis of man is hamd. Because of joy, because of love. And if you look at the rest of Fatiha, it is a prescription for how you can live in that state. Yeah? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. That's the whole of Tasawwuf right there. So, joy, praise, hope, love, connection to the world. These are in the heart, because in the heart is the place that the soul has arrived, and that is its connection to the zone of the mulk. And as a result of that, appropriateness. They come from the heart. From the liver comes the will to do. Well, we've gone over that. The thing of frustration or anger, we explained that. And also optimism. Because you start out wanting to do something. Why? Because you think you'll get it done. If you don't think you'll get it done, will you start? No. That will frustrate you. So from the liver comes optimism. From the kidneys, the will to survive and endure. The basis of the survival instinct. And when that is threatened, fear and anxiety. The small intestine, the will to think. Why? Because this is connected to your capacity to digest what you eat, or to digest. So the small intestine, the power that manifests at the small intestine is connected to your capacity to digest. And your thinking about the world is precisely your digesting your experiences. So we find a lot of what we know about these things are what we call empirical. We didn't do them in a lab. We observed ourselves. We observed the people around us. And and we transmitted the patterns, which is another way of having sciences. So, so from that comes the thing of worry. So worry is different from anxiety. Yeah? Because worry comes, oh, I think that might happen. Or I think that might happen. Oh dear, what if that happens? Oh gosh, what if that happens? And if that happens? Oh, until you get yourself in the loop, then you do nothing. And you're always thinking and thinking and worrying and worrying and worrying and worrying. Yeah? When you find that, usually there are issues to do with the small intestine, which the Chinese call the spleen. And and rationality. So once you find, sometimes you might be ill and you find you can't think, you'll find some degree of indigestion to do with that, or the incapacity to digest certain types of things. And then the brain is the zone in which the ruh envisions, it projects itself, it builds an image of what is happening, of where it is, in the brain. So just like in the way that the pen Allah created the pen as a receptacle of His knowledge of what is, was, and will be, and then it was written on the lawh, which I call lawhik. So that transference of what the soul is acquiring is placed into the brain, is stored in the brain. When you die, it takes it. It takes it with it. So it's possible even to treat diseases in which there is loss of memory by the increasing of the ruhani energy. So it can root its energy pathways around what's not working in the brain.
Would that explain why children have great memory?
Yes.
Because they're all fresh and their brains are working.
Yes, and when the energy of the kidney is strong, then memory is strong. And there's a reason for that.
Would that mean, we always think, I'm too old now, so my memory's not as good as I was when I was a kid. But does that mean you have the potential to regain that ability?
Yes, feed the kidneys. Feed the kidneys, because the kidneys, we have to take a slight jump off. The kidneys govern fluids in the body. And the brain is mainly a fluid organ. So we find that the doorway to strengthening some aspects of brain function are through the kidneys. Don't ask me how, I don't know, but it's part of the pattern. So we feed, especially adrenal depletion will cause weak memory. Especially, it depends, because you have long-term memory and short-term memory. Now, in my qiyas, I think that it's mainly long-term memory that the kidneys rule in that way. Okay? So yes, if you have a weak memory, it's possible to strengthen it. I think, don't ask my wife about that, because I think she thinks I don't have a very good memory. And that's a useful quality to have. So in the brain, once there is enough energy, then you can build coherence, the sequence of events. Things are ordered. So when the body doesn't have the energy to supply that, then what you'll find is that the brain's capacity for that sequencing, which we call coherence, begins to break down. That's an aspect of mental illness. Yeah? Questions? Ready to move on? Bismillah. Good. So now you've got layers of consciousness. This is a bit of a side. And the easiest way to grasp that is to think about the development of language. If you've been around a baby, what are the first sounds that a baby offers? What's the first bit of language that they get? It's like tone feeling, right? He's happy. You know he's happy when he's crying. When he's sad, some adults are like that too. But the point is that it's this tone feeling which indicates something that that now in the marriage of neurology and the science of consciousness, we are seeing that they have agreed that the first things that happen are feelings. Yeah? So when you wake up in the morning, you feel a certain way. And then you start to think about the day based upon how you feel, right? So consciousness emerges like that. And then from there emerges thinking and envisioning. Yeah? And then I'm talking about intellection, which really is like firasa, or basira, is the capacity for what we would call spiritual insight. But what we're talking about is an insight that where the ruh is able to draw on everything that it has at its disposal to see into the thing. Yeah? To see into it by the light of Allah. And the more ihsan you have, the more sincerity you have, is the more that capacity is unleashed. Yeah? So, why is it important to understand this? Because the state of your organic health, the state of your organs, will affect the way you feel. Yeah? So since it will affect the way you feel, will change the way you think. Yeah? And it will affect your ability to jump to that higher human capacity. Which then begins to bring us to Ramadan. Questions?
How do you know you're in a good state?
Ala yawm al-qiyamah. That's the only way we'll know. On the yawm al-qiyamah. That's the state of man. We don't know anything. Yeah, we don't know anything. We don't know the state. I mean, Allah. On the journey to Allah, yeah, there is illness and health. And each of them, Allah reveals a new knowledge to you. So yeah, and you don't know which one will swing it for you on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. So bear both of them with patience. Yeah? If you find yourself passing through the states of the messengers, or the messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then take that as good news that you have found the Sirat al-Mustaqim. If you find yourself with states that are other than his, then weep and ask Allah's help. Because we don't know. That's why Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Ali, Aisha radiallahu anhum, all of them. That's why the Sahaba would often be found crying and making statements like, I wish I were a blade of grass. Yes, because we do not know. Yeah. So, we are caught between fear and hope. So the two sandals we wear One is called khawf and one is called raja. It's called fear and hope. We fear the adhab of Allah, and the adhab of Allah is in things, because it's by His act. So if I abuse water, then Allah's adhab will come to me in this world through water. Yeah? And if I abuse fire, then Allah's adhab will come through fire. If I abuse food, Allah's adhab will come through that. And there are many ayahs which confirm this. Yeah? So khawf is the means by which you enter into the quality of taqwa. And raja, hope, is the quality by which you fall in love with your Lord, because you see His mercy. Yeah? Does that answer the question? Okay, well, we've gone through this one. The health of the organs affects the way we feel. It's our psychology and our ability to digest our world. And the way we feel, our psychology, affects our organs' ability to work. Yeah? By now, I don't think anybody kind of doubts this, and if you do, then step outside and we'll settle it there. But yeah. Oh, sorry, my bad jokes that nobody gets. Okay, you understand this, right? You can see why. Okay, so what you eat affects all this, right? So you see this great connection between our diets and our lifestyles and the health of our organs and our spirit. Good. Oh, sorry, you were writing. You can finish. Got it? Good. Bismillah. So there's a great saying of the Sufis. And when I saw it first, it used to really perplex me. It says, food is for the spirit and prayer is for the body. I said, food is for the spirit and prayer is for the body? What are they saying? Yeah. I think by now you're probably beginning to cotton on to what they meant or what they mean. Okay, so let's begin to look at that. The first thing is this thing of intentionality, which affects the unfolding of lawhic realities. Okay? When you intend something and you set out on it, right? This is one of the paths that had been written for you. Okay? Because there are two things, qadr and qada. Qadr is capacity, qada are paths. Yeah? So you have these capacities, and these capacities have the potential to be unfolded in these ways, in these possible ways. So your intentionality changes the way that you unfold that capacity. So Allah says in the ayah of halal, about food, He says, halalan wa tayyiban. It is halal and wholesome. The Muslims today seem to have forgotten the tayyiban bit. But this has many secrets. Because the halal represents the whole zone of what it is possible to do. But some of it can be harmful. The tayyib, considering the tayyib, ties you to considering what will bring about a good result. Yeah? So when you have exerted yourself like that, Allah rewards you with the way that the angels bring out the barakah of what you are bringing out. Yeah, what is coming out by your connection, by your niyyah. And so, as it is coming out, the reality of what you had intended begins to unfold. So for those people who see it before it reaches the world of form, they can tell. Yeah, because ghaib is relative. Ghaib is what you can't see, right? So different people have different capacities for seeing. And that we see with all of our companions. Some people see into some things more than others and so on. You got the companion who, she has a dream or he has a dream and you go, uh-oh, something's going to happen. Yeah, because it's so consistent. But that is a capacity that people have. So, as it is coming out, it begins to manifest. So, let's give an example in our modern world. We became obsessed with money and profit. And so, something like wheat, which is one of Allah's ni'mas to man, they looked at it and they said, okay, well, how can this wheat make me more profit? Yeah? So they looked at the possible paths, all of which would be halal. But they didn't care about tayyib, about what would benefit man. So they designed a wheat that is best for the factory and best for profit. It holds more water and more air. So you buy a loaf of bread and you do this, and it will, you can hold it in your hand. The problem is that what makes that happen, what makes it hold water and air, are glutens, which are like glues. They're these long chains, that stretch. And that's really difficult for people to digest. And when they stop digesting it and they eat it, it wreaks havoc in their bodies. Yeah? So you see how the niyyah affected the unfolding. So if you look at something, see its fruits, because its fruits will tell you about the niyyah behind it. Okay? That which is done for the face of Allah brings benefit and benefit and benefit and benefit and benefit. And that's the highest. And then they are in darajat, they are in stages down from that. Yeah? That which is done for the benefit of mankind is for the benefit of mankind. And the multiplication of its benefit is like that. Yeah? When we're talking about the divine mathematics, right? That's it. So, your intentionality affects the mizaj of what is manifesting. So what you do to earn for that food, or what the decisions that you make when you bring that food, they all affect what finally you will eat, and then the behavior Alhamdulillah. And then the behavior that will manifest from what is eaten. For instance, there was a study in Sweden that looked at the presence of things called antigens. These are of the presence of what is in the diet of the mother and the way it affects the mental health of the child. And what they identified, one of the things that I've understood from that research is that they implicated gluten, high levels of gluten in diets, people who have some kind of digestive problems, to the raising of the statistical incident. What am I saying simply? To the increase of psychosis, of mental illness in the offspring, in the children. Yeah? So here we're seeing the confirmation of this basic law of existence. So survival is the most important part. So excess food and its waste will be dealt with first in order to maintain life. So the ruh cannot harvest the energy from the body until the body is taken care of, because you have to survive in this time, right? Unless you destroy its internal balance, which sometimes happens. So once that is taken care of, the energy is then turned for the ruh's journey. So the balance of food is important. If it's too little, then you don't have the strength. Yeah? Too much, and then the ruh doesn't get the energy. Yeah? So fasting releases the spirit to first clear and repair the body. Then it ascends to the ruh's journey. Yeah? Okay. So, first of all, when you fast, when you find that you got headaches, that's because your lymphatic system is having to clear itself. So first, the body will deal with itself. Then, it will move on to the soul beginning to get that energy for its journey. So, things like silence, being concerned with what concerns you, so not gossiping or concerning yourself with things which are completely, Allah has not given you responsibility over. So when Allah puts something in your zone, think about it and work out how to deal with it. But when He hasn't put it in the zone of your responsibility, then leave it. How will you know? It's because you can do something about it. Yeah? So when you see that you can do something about it, then look to see if in that moment you are obligated to act. If you are not, leave it. So that's called being concerned with what concerns you. And this thing called zuhud, getting rid of the excess. So zuhud is not, people translate it as doing without. No, it doesn't mean that. It means what's excess. You get rid of what's excess. And that's something we will do throughout our lives. So zuhud allows the nafs to disconnect sufficiently from the world with balance, because zuhud is gradual. So you learn to balance. You look at the effect that it has on how you are in the world as you strip away things. And so more and more in doing the normal things that you do, it allows more energy for the ruh's journey. Then there's another aspect. So these are all important parts of fasting. So you're there, you have a limited amount of energy, look to see what you involve yourself in. Yeah? Cut away the strip away the non-essential. Then there's this other aspect called tadbir, which is giving up management of affairs. Giving up management of affairs means to strip ourselves of the illusion that we are doing anything. Yeah? How many times have you struggled and tried to do something and Allah has decreed that will not manifest? And you pour energy into it and it never happens. It's always collapsed. So when you have success in something, recognize it is Allah who is doing it. Yeah? So that stripping away of the illusion of power stops the self from giving itself, because it's so connected to the world, it thinks that it's in charge of all of these things. So it spends all of this energy trying to manage it all, which it can't. So then you get stress conditions, heart attacks, this, that, the other. No, give it up. Be content with where you are. Be content with what Allah has sent you. and be patient in the face of affliction. And because Allah is Rahman or Rahim, expect the best from Him. Questions? Do you want to take a break? Want to go on? Good. Bismillah. Good. So now we come to the matter of foods. So how do foods affect this aspect of us? Okay. So what we've seen is that this body which comes from the zone of the mulk, and it comes with a spirit, yeah, it is in the world, and it's harvesting energy and so on. It's keeping itself strong so that this soul can make its journey of knowledge through the creation. So it needs energy, right? So if you look at what it needs energy. It needs to maintain the balance of its salts so that fluids and so on can move around the body. That the consistency of the tendons and the bloodstream and so on can be maintained. So those are usually supplied by things like minerals, and it also needs to communicate. And though for the communication it needs one of the most important things are essential minerals. It needs proteins, which it builds with, but also are used in that communication, in that regulatory role. And it needs cholesterols, which are also used in that regulatory role, which are also used in things like brain signaling and so on. And that when it's for energy, everything comes down to glucose, because the body uses glucose, which is a sugar. And we can take in glucose, we can take in foods which will supply energy from two main groups. One are carbohydrates and the others are fats. Yeah, and we will metabolize them. Our bodies will use them in different ways. Each has different mizaj. Fats are digested using gall, which is produced in the liver. Gall needs cholesterol. Here is, the last time I was here, I spoke about this ayah. يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي. That Allah brings out, it's the other way around. Yeah, He brings out life out of death and death out of life. The other way around. So here we see it, this balance, because in order to digest fats, we need to produce something called gall. And gall needs cholesterol to be produced. So if we eat fats in excess, then we won't be able to produce the thing that we need to digest them. So we get indigestion. If we use them too little, then we aren't able to produce the things which we need to digest it. Yeah? So this is balance. So what is it? In Ramadan, especially on these long days, you will find that fats will give us the longest burn. They'll give us energy more consistently. We'll feel hungry less. But remember that to go in excess in anything exposes you to Allah's adab. Yeah, to Allah's anger, His punishment. So fats will provide cholesterol, the basis of many hormones, and the preferred fuel of the brain. So, sometimes you're trying to read the Quran or think about something when you're fasting and you can't go on. That's because the brain is low on fuel. Yeah? So you'll find that fats will help to smoothen that and give you energy for longer. So they will give energy for a longer time and delay cravings. Now what do you have to stay away from? Stay away from hydrogenated fats. There's lots of medical research and so on which tells you that they're a problem. Again, this is another story. If you look at the niyyah of it, you study it, you will see its fruit multiplied many times. And its fruit is quite ugly. But they're a problem. So margarine, despite what it will say, have a low-fat diet, eat margarine, well, they are liars. So you need a balance of animal and vegetable fats. Yeah. Usually they talk about omega-3 and omega-6 oils and all of this. The omega-3 are generally vegetable oils. The omega-6 are animal. You need a mixture of both. Things like olive oil. Yeah. It's mentioned in the Quran. Yeah. Eat. Basically, tayyib. The better the quality of the food, the more benefit. Yeah. So try and eat higher quality foods. Yes. Okay. What kind of food contains fats? Samosas. No, now being serious. You'll find things like eggs, yogurt, cheeses, meat contain fat. If you eat too much of them, you'll get indigestion. So if you find that you're eating and you're getting indigestion, then you need to cut down. Okay? If you persist in it, you're going to get sick. Yeah, basically. And then you have some vegetable sources, so you got things like olive oil. In Morocco, you'll see them drinking a cup of olive oil. There's little snap cups of olive oil in the morning, and so on. This is essential for brain function and for just general hormonal health and so on, and energy. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Would you avoid like sunflower oils and
Yeah, in excess. Yeah, I mean, this is, I would say, yeah, because what we have found is that they said these things are high cholesterol, which is nonsense in any case, because the body itself it has to produce its own cholesterol, right? And okay, yes, there are some sources of things which will act like a bottle, a substitute. But okay, what we have is that we have been told to stay away from animal fats and go to vegetable fats, which was really supported by research, which was funded by industry. Man has always eaten a mixture of the two. Yeah? So you actually need fats from both sources. Usually, some people say it's like 1-to-1, so like equal amounts. But what's important is getting into the habit of observing the way that your body works. You have to have time in which you sit alone, quietly, to observe your body. If you can keep a diary, keep a diary. Get into the habit of sitting down and looking, because what you will begin to notice is the connection between what you eat and how you feel, your energy levels. Whether you were sluggish, sometimes you'll notice that for women, like you might have eaten a thing and then you'll notice that you have a heavy menstrual period. Yeah? You begin to build these connections between that. Like men, you might notice that a connection between what you ate or drank and headaches. Okay, but if your life doesn't have a structure that allows you to become aware of those things, then you won't be able to benefit from yourself. Yeah? Good. Next thing are sugars and carbohydrates. Any questions? Sugars and carbohydrates. They will provide energy which does not last a long time. So you eat sugars, you get a burst of energy, but it doesn't last a long time. Grains will provide bulk, but they will leave you hungry usually within 6 hours, whilst fats will last a little longer. In order to manage glucose spikes, so these are the sugar spikes, and protect the body, fats have to be stored, sugars or carbohydrates have to be stored as fats. Because as they are digested, as they, in fact, beyond they're metabolized, what happens with them is that they're turned into acetates, which are like vinegars, which will affect. They're damaging to the body. So what it does is that it drives them into fats and stores them that way. Yeah. So avoid too many carbohydrates and sugars, especially at suhoor. Yeah? If you're going to have sweet things, don't have them at suhoor. Have them at iftar. Yeah. So then we have protein, which is meat and eggs, which also contain fats. They will prevent you losing muscle mass. You want to burn the excess fat that you have. You don't want to consume your muscle. Okay? So if you don't have enough fuel, then your body will turn to consuming proteins. Yeah, so, and there are some proteins which are essential. You must have them every day because your body doesn't produce them. So they will prevent you losing muscle mass and provide essential proteins for rebuilding. Avoid very high protein diets during the fast. Okay. Proteins and fats put metabolic pressure. They put pressure on the liver. Yeah? So all of those things we were talking about, will, the will to do, anger, frustration, etc. If you overindulge, what it will do is it will damage the liver, and you will find that you have a tendency to be angry or frustrated and so on. Yeah? The sugars and carbohydrates have different capacities, so they are of different types, being digested in slightly different ways. So they'll have different effects, and we looked at that a bit earlier. Yeah, but you'll keep seeing the implication of two main organs in this, or three: the liver, the small intestine, and the kidneys. Yeah. So as they are damaged during the fast, if your food damages these things, then you're going to have those problems. Yeah. Good. Then vegetables. They provide a good mix of fats, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. Very high fiber diets require more water. Maintain a balance that keeps you going to the toilet to stool regularly, at least once a day. So you've got this balance between a high vegetable diet, high fiber diet in Ramadan, because a high fiber diet means you need more water. But without enough fiber, you won't go to the toilet regularly. So you have to find that balance. And you, while you're eating, you have to observe the way you respond. Yeah? So you have to take responsibility. So water. You have to drink lots of water and ensure that you maintain and build your tissue salts, because, water is retained in the body by the presence of mineral salts, which will hold on to it, will cause the body to hold on to the liquids. The tissue salts retain the fluids and ensure that the kidneys work well, because the transfer of fluids across the body is maintained by something called a potassium-sodium pump. Yeah? So it's how they attract liquids between themselves. So for that and other processes, you have to make sure that you renew your mineral salts. So, you know, there's a herb called nettle, the stinging nettle, that's plentiful. Well, it's too late to pick them, but you can buy dried nettle quite easily online. Make soups and put it in your soups. Yeah? That will help to replenish your tissue salts. So you have to ensure that you drink enough before your meal when you break the fast. Yeah? So when you break the fast, remember that when you eat, you won't want to drink. So when you break the fast, make sure you give yourself like a half an hour in which you drink so you don't get dehydrated. Because the nights are short, so once you have eaten, it's going to be a while before you want to drink. And if you drink while your stomach's full, you just feel uncomfortable and you don't digest your food well. So what's the sense of eating it if you can't digest it? The other thing is lighten and simplify the diet. Oh dear, I can't spell. So that the spirit will soar. Remember that reducing your food allows the ruh not to have to manage taking care of the body, and that energy is then turned to the ascension of the soul. And the Prophet ﷺ said, As-salat miraj, the salat is the miraj of the mu'min. Yeah? So, for you to make your ascension, you have to ensure that your body has enough energy, so you have to eat the right amounts, and if you eat excess, you then damage that. So the two things that will help you to ascend are silence, a few things. Silence, being concerned with what concerns you, giving up management of affairs, zuhud, giving up what's in excess. So if you notice that this makes this amount of food makes you to feel too full, work on reducing it. Work on stripping away, finding your balance. You know, so this is your journey. We're on a journey we're on a journey through the world, and we only have one body. This is our mount to ride through to the presence of the King. And the King is always present. So it is a journey in our realization. So Allah is the direction and the way. And know that food is for the, and prayer is for the body. Okay, so if you're ill, pray. You'll find it will strengthen you. Okay? Alhamdulillah. Wa shukrillah.
Where do we go wrong in the normal fast? We tend to eat, in the mornings we eat cereals, we eat like chapatis, parathe, curries. In the iftar we eat a lot of fried food, we probably eat meat almost every day, we eat a lot of rice, we eat a lot of fruit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So where are we going wrong? What do you need to cut out what we were doing, please?
Well, in the morning, you know, how many of you get heartburn by about 9 in the morning in Ramadan? So burning stomach. Put your hands up. Be honest. How many of you get heartburn, burning stomach in the middle? Yeah. Come, be honest. Yeah. If you eat meat that time of the morning, especially mixing meat with things like carbohydrates, you're going to end up with heartburn. Because the two of them are digested in slightly different ways. Yeah? So my advice to you is to have fairly, fatty things, and if you're going to have proteins and fats go well together. They don't conflict with each other. And you find that they're supplied in that way in existence. Yeah? So have eggs and so on in the morning. Have a little bit of olive oil. Have milk and things like that. Yeah? And you'll find that you will tend to get hungry much later. So you won't be hungry by about 10, 11 o'clock. You start to get hungry about 2. Yeah? And then the time, if you want to indulge in sweet things, honestly, sweet things and so on, then do it, especially after you've had your water and so on, or during the time, or at the same time you have your water and so on, iftar. Yeah? Not iftar, iftar, yeah. You have to really be observant. There's something about stealing people's realizations, right? I can tell you everything. But one of the things that you have to do is you have to be observant of yourselves. Because you carry this knowledge. This knowledge is carried by your behavior. The people around you will notice, they'll hear, gosh, my tummy's burning. I shouldn't have eaten that meat. The person who thinks that a burning stomach in Ramadan is normal goes, meat? So they might try it, you understand? And then those knowledges pass and they live in a community of people. Yeah. Our tendency is to have information. I tell you everything, and then you're there. I should do this and that, and I go, well, you do nothing. Yeah. So what we want to do is open you to observation about yourself. Yeah. It's not exactly what you wanted to hear, but I hope it's a help. But in the morning, don't mix foods up too much. Don't mix fruit and meat. It's going to be difficult for you, right? Don't mix things up too much. Yeah. When in the evening, when you break that fast, and that stomach acid is strong, then it'll deal with most things. But if you abuse it, then eventually it won't be able to. What would your typical iftar and suhoor contain? Oh dear. I have soup at iftar. And my absolute favorite is something called fura de nono, which is yogurt with millet. And I've known, my best Ramadan, the thing I enjoy most, is to just have yogurt with millet, little bits of millet for the Ramadan. The lighter the food for me is the better. But that would be murder for you because there are no samosas in there. Yeah? So for me, in Ramadan, I lighten and I simplify the diet. Yeah? So in Ramadan, you should feel light, full of energy. Yeah, I can't wait. I got those rakats to put down tonight, Yeah. And then remember, we have really short nights. We have really short nights. This time, you're going to see all of these arguments about, oh dear, I'll say it anyway. See all these arguments about the time of suhoor. When is the end? Okay, here's the problem. We have a fiqhi problem. In this country, at this time of the year, the conditions of Isha are never fulfilled. Yeah? So we use 2 rules. Basically, we have no choice. We either say an hour and a half or 2 hours after Maghrib is Isha. Yeah? Because the conditions of Isha are never fulfilled. which means that it's almost twilight until the time of suhoor, right? So we're going to have problems with ascertaining the time of that suhoor ends. That's standard, right? So you're going to see a number of opinions. The thing I would advise you is to really sit down and speak to your ulama and let them, because you have to consider the health of the jama'ah, of the community in a situation like that. Yeah? So that's why at this time, especially when the days are long like this, you hear all of these arguments about when suhoor begins, or suhoor ends, sorry. Okay? But remember, we have really long days. Get some rest in the late afternoon. After Asr, get some rest. Yeah? And for some people, you see, this is an easy time of the year to pray all night. You stand in the night, that's kind of wali territory. Yeah, so you only get like 2-3 hours to do qiyamul layl. So I don't know what you call it. What we do is, if each rak'ah you do what we call a thummun. What's a thummun for you? It's like an eighth of a hizb. Okay. It's an eighth of a sipara. Yeah. So if you do one of those eighths of a sipara in each rak'ah, which is fairly easy, then in 8 rak'ahs you get a hizb, which is a sipara, and in 16 rak'ahs you get a para. Yeah, mathematics is everywhere. Alhamdulillah. Okay.
How about sleep? You mentioned in the previous talk that sleep is also important with our health. But on one hand, the nights are short, so we're going to be staying up.
Yeah.
Great. When are the best times to sleep?
Okay. Did you go to Hadramaut? Okay. Okay, here's what you do. Sleep after Asr. Yep. And then also when you've finished, sleep if you can until 10. I know people work, yeah? But if you're working, then after Dhuhr, if you go out and have lunch, because most people get an hour, take 20 minutes to close your eyes. Yeah? So in that hour, take 20 minutes to close your eyes. And you'll find that you'll have a lot more energy, because one of the things that will affect you is how tense you become in the day. So if you don't break up the day, then what happens is that tension distributes itself across the organs. Yeah? Those breaks will help to break it, to reduce that. Yeah? So long days, by the end of the day, you feel quite tense and tired. So you break it up.